The saloon lights flickered in the haze of smoke and whiskey. Rough voices clashed with the twang of a dusty piano. But all sound seemed to fade when she spoke, soft, trembling, defiant. "You paid for me. Now take it off." Her words sliced through the air like a blade, silencing laughter and stopping conversations mid-breath. Every head turned toward the corner where she stood, hands trembling, chin lifted high. The rancher didn't move. His hat shadowed his eyes, but his jaw tightened as the weight of her words hung between them. She was young, far too young for the life she'd been forced into. Her dress was torn at the sleeve, her hair tangled, yet her pride shone through like fire. Around them, men exchanged looks, half amusement, half disbelief. No one dared to interrupt. They wanted a show, and she'd just given them one. The rancher rose slowly from his chair, the wooden floor creaking under his boots. His broad shoulders caught the flickering light as he turned toward her, eyes dark and unreadable. He hadn't meant to end up here. He came to town for supplies, maybe a quiet drink before heading back to his ranch. But when the auctioneer had shouted for bids and she was dragged onto that stage, something inside him twisted. She stood proud even then, refusing to cry, though the fear in her eyes betrayed her. Men had laughed, tossing coins like they were betting on a horse. He didn't know what made him raise his hand, but once he did, the hammer fell, and the room went silent. He had bought her, though he despised the word. Now standing in front of her, he could feel every stare digging into his back. He didn't touch her, didn't speak. The girl's lips trembled as she stared back at him, anger burning through her fear. "Well?" she demanded. Her voice cracked but didn't break. "You bought me, didn't you? So what are you waiting for?" The rancher swallowed hard. His hands, scarred from years of labor, clenched at his sides. "You're not something to take," he said finally, his voice low and steady. A murmur spread through the crowd. Some laughed, others cursed under their breath. No one had ever heard a man in that saloon talk like that. But he wasn't like the others. He'd seen enough cruelty, enough pain. He wouldn't add to it. Without another word, he tossed a few coins onto the counter, grabbed his hat and nodded toward the door. "Come on," he said quietly. She hesitated, glancing between him and the men who had just bid for her freedom, or her body. Then chin high, she walked past them all, following the stranger into the cold night. The wind howled as the door slammed shut behind them. The town's laughter faded into the distance, replaced by the creak of saddle leather and the rustle of dust. She didn't know where he was taking her, or why he hadn't done what every other man would have. All she knew was that for the first time in years, someone had bought her and hadn't touched her. The moon hung low over the desert town as they rode away from the saloon, the night air thick with dust and silence. The girl clung to the saddle, her wrists raw from the ropes that had bound her earlier. She hadn't asked where they were going. She didn't care. All she knew was that the rancher's silence weighed heavier than any chain. He didn't look back once, his posture straight, eyes fixed on the horizon. The soft thud of hooves echoed between them like a heartbeat neither dared to acknowledge. Just hours earlier, that same man had walked into the saloon a stranger, dusty boots, weathered face, eyes that had seen too much. He came for a horse, maybe a drink, not a woman's soul up for sale. The auctioneer's call had rung through the smoke-filled room, his voice rough and greedy. "Lot 6, young, strong. Can work or serve." The men had jeered, tossing coins, shouting obscenities. She'd stood there on the platform, trying not to tremble. But when her eyes met his, something cracked. He wasn't like them. There was no hunger in his stare, only disbelief. Still, when another man reached for her, the rancher's voice broke through the chaos. "I'll take her." The room fell silent. No one argued with him. There was something about his tone, something that carried authority and quiet fire. When the gavel struck wood, her fate was sealed. She was his now, though she couldn't tell if that meant salvation or damnation. They rode for miles before she finally spoke. "You didn't have to do that," she said. Her voice a whisper swallowed by the wind. He didn't reply. She tried again, sharper this time. "You paid for me, why?" He shifted slightly in the saddle. "Didn't seem right what they were doing," he said at last. "Didn't sit right in my gut." "Didn't sit right?" she repeated, almost laughing. So you spent your money to fix your conscience. He didn't flinch. Maybe, he said quietly. Or maybe I just couldn't stand watching it happen. The road stretched before them, endless and empty. She studied his face in the moonlight, rough lines carved by years of work and loss. He wasn't handsome, not in the way she'd once dreamed of, but there was something steady about him, something real. She turned away, biting her lip. Whatever his reasons were, one truth lingered between them. He'd bought her. But for the first time, she didn't feel owned. By dawn, the horizon blushed pale gold as they reached the edge of his land, a wide, lonely stretch of earth framed by distant hills and whispering sage. The cabin stood small but sturdy, smoke rising faintly from its chimney. The girl dismounted stiffly, her body aching from the long ride. "This where you live?" she asked, brushing dust from her skirt. The rancher nodded, looping the reins over a post. "It ain't much," he said, "but it's home." She looked around, half expecting him to take her inside, to finish what every man in town had assumed he'd do. But he didn't. Instead, he walked to the barn, checking the horses like nothing had changed. That calm, unhurried way of his confused her more than anger ever could. "You gonna make me sleep in there too?" she asked, trying to mask the tremor in her voice with defiance. He turned, meeting her eyes for the first time since they'd left town. "You can if you want," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "Or you can take the bed inside. I'll sleep out here tonight." She blinked, caught off guard. "You'd rather freeze than share a roof with me," she shot back. He shrugged slightly. "You've had enough taken from you. Don't need to take more." The words sank into her chest, heavy and strange. No man had ever spoken to her like that. Most saw her as a thing to use, a transaction, a body to claim. But this one treated her like she mattered. Like her comfort, her dignity was something worth protecting. Later, she found herself standing on the cabin's porch, wrapped in the coat he'd handed her. It was far too big, smelling faintly of leather and pine. Inside, the place was clean but lonely. One chair, one table, a small shelf lined with worn books. A single framed photo rested by the lamp, a woman with kind eyes and a child's laughter frozen beside her. "She's gone," the rancher's voice came softly from behind her. She turned, startled. "Your wife?" He nodded. "Last winter. Fever took her." For a long moment neither spoke. The wind howled outside, rattling the window panes. Then quietly she said, "You didn't bring me here for her shadow, did you?" He met her gaze, steady and sincere. "No," he said. "I brought you here so you could have what she had. Freedom, safety, a chance to live again."